Hey guys, this is Dark Skeleton, and today I have a very epic game for you. I'm playing Warlock, the other guy's playing Warlock, but the difference is we're playing two different kinds of Warlock. And I'm playing Zoo, but not a standard kind of Zoo. I'm actually playing Mech Zoo, which I have seen no one else do. I don't think I've seen a single fell cannon in Constructed, so I had to give it a try. It's a card that I believed would be very strong when GVG came out. Naturally, that means that my opponent is actually playing a handlock deck. Now, his handlock is more or less standard. I did notice that it has pretty much as much healing things as you could possibly imagine, everything short of Alexstrasza. So this game does take a little while, but it was very intense. Right off the bat, I jump into the game with a Mech Warper and 2 Clockwork Gnomes on turn 1, keep in mind, this deck isn't pure aggro, it's still Zoo, it's still board control. It's not just trying to burst your opponent down, but it's trying to put so much pressure on your opponent that they're forced to play their hand, that they're forced to make suboptimal trades. And having just put it together a few hours ago, it seems to be doing pretty well, actually. So Immortal Coil's one of my gnomes. That pretty much tells me this guy has to be a handlock. No Zoo would be playing something like that on turn 2. That means that I immediately have to go ahead and put pressure on the handlock. If I let him stall and draw into too much, he's just going to destroy me with Molten Giants, Mountain Giants, and possibly Twilight Drakes as well. For turn 2, I do have a really good field. If I'm able to keep that Micro Machine on the field, then I'm able to put more damage on him. I could also use it to trade into a big guy like a Mountain Giant if I have to. But of course, there's no way he's just going to let me keep things like that right there. So he goes ahead and Soulfires. I haven't seen too many Warlocks actually using Soulfire over Dark Bomb recently, but it's still a reasonable card to play. It's just not the overpowered BS that it used to be. So my choice here is between a reduced mana cost Shredder versus playing my Tinkerer with the buff. Either would be fine choices. I decided to go with the Shredder just to be ultra mana efficient, use that Mech Warper while he's still alive and on the field. The logic was I should be able to play the Tinkerer in the future anyway, and maybe I'm even able to play a 1 or 2 mana minion in addition to that. So when you look at my board, what do you see? A great Hellfire target. So he goes ahead, clears my board. Luckily the Shredder does give me a 2/2 Wolf. The Tinkerer would have also survived. I think slightly I would have preferred the Shredder to get hit by that than the Tinkerer, but it's a hard call. And then I go ahead and make my own 4/4 Tinkerer since I don't have any mechs in my hand. Now you might think that, oh, I'm down to one real card and a couple of crappy spells, but this deck never really goes out of cards. It works just like other Zoo decks where you can keep life tapping, but in addition to that, I also have double Jeeves in the deck, and that's been working out really well. He drops a Sludge Belcher, which means I drop a Doom Guard, never allow him to slow me down to the point where he can just relax, and I have to make the decision, do I actually hit him for 4 more damage and put him in Molten Giant range? I decide to go for it. He only has 5 cards in his hand, drawing into 6, which means there's a good chance he doesn't have 2, and he might not even have 1 in his hand. Plus, the more pressure I put on him, the more I prevent him from playing Mountain Giants because he has to respond to me. Luckily, it's early enough on in the game where you can't use that Molten Giant and Shadow Flame my field, then I might have been in significant trouble. He does manage to kill my Doom Guard off, which means I do need to find another way of dealing with the Mountain Giant. Molten Giant, sorry. My initial draw doesn't really get me anything. The Doom Guard, not so much a help. I don't want to just throw that at the Giant. So what I decide to do is just play Jeeves, draw some extra cards, and hope that he doesn't feel like Shadow Flaming my board. That said, Shadow Flaming a bunch of these weak guys plus a Gnomish Tinkerer wouldn't really be worth it. I am able to put him at 7, which means he's in serious danger. I actually thought that by the next turn I would have him down to lethal and he'd just die, but they've been adding new cards that make Warlocks really tough to kill, as other classes, such as you might see a Control Paladin playing them. Of course, what I'm really talking about is the Antique Healbot. It is a great control item. You can't just rush people down as easily as you used to be able to. Because he weakened his Molten Giant by taking out my Tinkerer, I can now think of a nice response to that, and one of those ways is actually to play the Fell Cannon that I was saying. This card is going to be good when GVG comes out. Obviously, I have a Wolf too. It will hit your own minions if you have a living non-mech. So I have to use that Wolf, trade it into that. Fell Cannon guaranteed to do the extra 2 damage, which means nice value there. The stats in the Fell Cannon, just like Ascensions, so if you're able to get that pseudo Battlecry effect to take out an enemy minion as well, it's quite the good card. So he throws down his second Sludge Belcher, which isn't the strongest of plays, but I get what he's trying to do. He's just trying to slow me down as much as possible because he realizes the pressure my Zoo deck is actually able to put on him. But him putting down a Sludge Belcher means I'm going to play my Doom Guard. Now, interestingly, he's playing cards like the Spider Tank, which actually isn't really standard handlock. Overall, his deck is very much the handlock theme, though I guess this deck list is not what you would see in a typical pros deck, but it's still very solid. The same concepts are there. It's still a little bit less out of the ordinary than my deck. I mean, at least I think it is. I have not seen any other Zoo Mech Warlocks. If you have, let me know. Or if you know of a pro version of the deck, that would be cool too. But I forgot that actually my Fel Cannon's going to hit my Doom Guard. It's not the end of the world. That just means he's a little bit more vulnerable to AoEs and that kind of thing. Not the best thing to have, obviously. I thought that if he was to Shadow Flame there that my Fel Cannon would live, but that actually was not taking into account the fact that he could just run into my Fel Cannon before Shadow Flaming. But my Jeeves does live. So although he has gotten pretty good Shadow Flames and Hellfires on me, I know for a fact that now he's really down on his AoE. No Warlock really runs 4 AoE spells, that would be absurd. And the more he AoEs, the safer I can feel about just putting down stuff. And that's one of the things that Mech does great. It just floods the board with all these creatures, and the fact that I'm a Zoo Warlock means it doesn't really matter if he clears my board. As long as he never gains tempo on me, I should be okay. The games I was losing with the deck is where my entire board got cleared, and the opponent was still able to play minions, keep tempo on me, and then control me and keep me contained. So with my 4 guys on the board, I'm pretty confident that unless he plays something like a double giant taunt, I should be able to go and, actually get him into lethal range pretty quickly here. He does use a Siphon Soul on my 4-4, which I think was actually crazy. I was like, wow, that must mean I'm pretty much about to win, right? But he actually has the second Hellfire. So that means it's kind of a reset back to square one. But I do have him at 12 health, which is not the best spot for a Warlock. And I do have the ability to play a lot of stuff in my hand. I wanted to play the Antique Healbot for 4 mana, but Now you might be wondering why I even have an Antique Healbot in the deck. Well, firstly, it's a mech, but secondly, against decks that might try to go really aggressive on me, I want to force them to not be able to just burst me down, for me to have the opportunity to do my trades as I want to do them, and the fact that he goes for my face doesn't really matter because I do have that 8 heal as backup. Now, interestingly, he was forced to use his second Siphon Soul on my Fel Cannon pretty much just to stay alive. As I was mentioning earlier, the more pressure I put on him, the more he has to play suboptimally, and that's huge for me. Him having to use a Siphon Soul on something like that, instead of possibly the Kel'Thuzad in my hand, is excellent. And really, it doesn't matter how many times he clears my board, it doesn't matter how many removal spells he has, because my deck is, I would say about 85–90% minions, of which about 80% of those are mechs. Now, at this point, I do actually have lethal on him on the board, but he places Lord Jaraxxus as any handlock would to save their own ass. Using that weapon, he's actually able to take out my 2-3. May have not been the optimal decision, just because at this point I have enough mana where the Mech Warper is pretty irrelevant. Personally, I think I would have gone for the 3-3. So I just life tap for more cards, put another creature down on the field, and at this point, I look at it and I'm like, what could he possibly do? I mean, he's pretty much out of AoEs. You can't play Mountain Giants so easily if he does have them in his hand. And unless he has some big taunts, I'm just going to be able to rush his face down. Well, he goes ahead and throws down the Dark Bomb, which shows that he wasn't just playing Soulfire, he was also playing Dark Bomb. But yeah, of course, how he survives the second Antique Healbot, which is a ridiculous amount of healing, so that means Jaraxxus to get back up to 15, 2 Antique Healbots. This guy just does not want to die. But the fact that he's now able to summon those 6/6 Dread Infernals is a bit of a problem for me. I can't really ignore his stuff too much. I mean, this turn I might be able to get away with it, but theoretically, he could still win. It's not impossible for him to do enough damage to kill me. So actually, I think that life tap there was a mistake. I'm not really going to need all the cards in my hand in general. I did plan on playing Kel'Thuzad, but I think having the Dark Bomb there would have also been better, because then I could have used my field and actually taken out the Antique Healbot as well. But just by playing Kel'Thuzad, I'm not only able to get the Death Rattle effects, but I'm also able to bring back Harvest Golems. Which means, really, there's no card in the world that he could have which could clear my board. So it's pretty much now or never. He either throws down the most absurd taunts I've ever heard of, which I don't think actually exists. Plus I have a Silence in my hand anyway for situations like that. Or he actually does lethal damage here. But no, what does he have in his hand? He has Earthen Ring Farseers. This guy brought more healing. How much healing do you need? It actually reminds me of how a lot of paladins like to play, where they just refuse to die. But no, that's going to be the end here. I just have too much damage. It doesn't matter that he could clear my boards. I was always able to maintain tempo, which means I pretty much can't lose, because I'm never going to run out of cards. Even if I do play the 2 cards I have in my hand each turn, I can still draw into that Jeeves and get 2 or 3 more cards, and it's just absurd how this deck can actually work. Now, if you'd like for me to make a video talking about the deck and going into each card I currently have in the deck, let me know. Aside from that, I've been Dark Skeleton. Please share with other people if you want to help me out, and thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.